movement on a windy day, if your rod tip unloads and if you're stuck with an unloaded rod in the air for any length of time in 28 kilometres an hour of wind, you've lost it. And then you have to pick it up again. So if you've got a soft rod, you've got to use a lot of arc or travel to pick up that tension again, and before you know it, you've got no tension left at the other end. So maybe a stiffer rod, as Paul was saying, might be better in a windy day. But if you understand about constant tension casting, I'm sure I could go and get that epic fiberglass rod and do just as good a job of it as the Sage 1. And I read somewhere a Joan Wolfe paragraph a long time ago, 20 years ago, I read a Joan Wolfe quote, someone might be able to steer me towards it: until you come to the point in your casting where you can feel the constant load on the rod in either direction, only until you get to that point do you start really learning quickly.
Yeah.
And I sort of agree with that, you know. People that have got it, lost it, lost it, they don't learn quickly, they learn really slowly. Whereas when you can feel it all the time through the direction changes, then you really do advance quickly as a caster. So in the wind today, obviously if you throw a back cast back, and if you haven't thrown good straight line path, you've thrown a big bag of shit behind you, the wind's going to compress it and it's not going to work anyway. So you want a good narrow loop today to go back in the wind. But if you throw back and sort of jerk the finish, put a ripple in it, the wind gets hold of that. If you throw back and you wait for that line to fully extend, man, that wind has got it. I was looking with Paul, maybe 20 feet sideways today. And to come from 20 feet sideways, it's like that tracking error on the board last night. Apart from not feeling the load, you get a problem at the other end. And of course, if your line sags and gets sideways, you're using up too much travel to get it tight. So what I think the best thing to do is oval cast. Yeah. So you're sort of going all the time. Or the other example, Paul, if I could have this, I did a casting pass on a windy day somewhere the other day. I don't know where it was, might have been Canberra or something. And I said, truthfully, I wanted everyone to do this. I really do think it's a better way to teach casting. One way to teach casting is 10 thumb on top, 10 o'clock. What's the other angle? 2. 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. They get it, lost it, got it, lost it, got it. And you go out there in that wind and do that, and it doesn't work. I think it would be better to give the beginners the rod, and say, whip it to death, mate. It'll go dead bloody straight every time because they've got the tension. It's not what we want, but I think it's better to get a beginner to come from that position and back it off instead of, oh, now what have I got to do now? Okay, 10 o'clock, now I've got to go to 2 o'clock, now back to 10 o'clock. I think you're better off coming on to teach someone that to start with. I know it's counterintuitive, but I do think they feel the tension from the start, from the get-go, and they never lose it.
Like circles, eights and straight.
It's sort of like that, isn't it? So out here, this Paul asked me to sort of explain how it works. And if you stand sideways and if you come forward before it has straightened, well before it's straightened, you feel the tension. And I said about Lefty Cray yesterday in the end room, I said, Lefty, do you think you creep? And he does. You watch him, he's using this arc and he creeps and then he makes a shot. He said, yeah, I guess I do creep, Peter, but is it a problem? And it's not a problem because he's got more arc than he needs. So he's happy to waste some of it in what some lesser casting instructors would identify as creep. It's intentional movement to keep the tension on the corner and then get the line nice and straight and the rod have some flex in it and then slam the difference home. He intentionally leads into it. My son Lockie does that. Lockie is a creeper from hell. But is it a problem? No. It's actually a better method of casting that I think you're going to have to call constant tension casting. And on a day like today, it is better. If you like cane rods or fiberglass rods, it is better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I like using up this space to turn the corner and then make the shot. It's a much nicer feeling for me to use. And with soft rods and cane rods, I have to do it.
Do you think that Lefty achieved that they look and roll faster when he does that?
Yeah, tell me about that. If you're coming into it this way, the top leg, the fly leg, is speeding off into the other corner, definitely. I liken it in casting schools to turning the corner is like swimming. When you have an Olympic swimmer, he swims flat out, freestyle to the brick wall at the other end. He doesn't go swim down here and go, oh shit, turn around and swim the other way. He swims this way and he does a tumble turn and changes his mass and his momentum 180 degrees and kicks off the wall and goes the other way. Lefty Cray does tumble turns with his fly line. Half of us here smack the brick wall and take off in the other direction. And if it's a windy day, you really see the difference. It's this extra, if that's the right arc, that's the position to start slamming it home. But I started from here, and what did I do, Tony? I forward drifted to here while the leader's still unrolling. Did I get that by drifting back into it? Absolutely not today. If you make the back cast, and then drift, you're dead today. You can't do that today. Dead calm day you can, but you can't do that today. So I get to this position just by going to that position. And then I'm happy to waste this bit. It's not wasted, it's actually useful. And then slam it home. Same thing here. I'm happy to waste this bit, but it's not one move, two moves. It's not like that today. You can't do that today.
The wider arc risks more open loop though?
Yeah, Peter asked me that. That's a good question. Does, now that I'm using this bigger space, risk a more open loop? Yeah, I reckon. So tell me though, it's a bit like that drawing on the whiteboard, is this loop better into the wind or is this candy cane better into the wind? I don't think it matters that the loop is wider. I think the fact is it actually goes better into the wind because of the tension and stuff.
You haven't lost tension.
Yeah. And what happens with start casting, and I learnt this on a day like this, about 5 or 6 years ago I did a corporate day for a farmer down the road. He had a bunch of people who wanted some lunchtime casting clown entertainment. So I took 20 rods down to teach them casting for 15 minutes. And I set all the rods up on his dam, and the wind was sideways at this strength, absolutely sideways. I had no choice but to cast sideways to the wind, which was okay, figuring most of them are right-handers. And at the time, I was throwing a lot of 5-weight distance. And I was confused at the time whether 5-weight distance for me was better slam to a stop, drift and creep back, or whatever you want to call it, drift back, and then come into it. So I was confused between that motion for the cast or flip it over, flip it over, flip it over. So I stood there with orange lines, side on to a strong wind, and we could do it today as an example. And if I slam it to a stop, the loop forms, the bottom leg, this is what I think happens, the bottom leg is stationary, isn't it? If this tip is still, this bit of line here is still. And as the loop gets further, a bit more line is still, and a bit more line is still. The top loop is travelling, the top leg's travelling, but the bottom leg is stationary until where the corner is. And while that wind at this strength is on the stationary line, it's pushing it sideways seriously. Because this bit's moving, it's still wanting to head towards the target, but it's actually getting ripped sideways open by the wind. And I was judging 25 feet of windage on that loop as it unrolled. And I'm trying to carry 80 feet or 70 feet or something. And as you know, I can throw you a candy cane like a rocket back there, but 25 feet of windage. When I flip it over like that, like this, maybe 10 feet of windage, because it's never, the bottom leg's always moving one way or the other or the other or the other. It hasn't got time to get windage on it. So even though the loop's bigger, Steve, I think it's better.
Probably also it is moving because it's being sucked up.
I think too, Peter, yeah, and I'm sucking it up with the rod tip into the next stroke. The tension on the thing, sucking it up, and I'm sucking it up here. And the wind moving line seems to be less wind affected than stationary line. Coming into it like lefty, I'm coming into it this way too, which is keeping the top leg going faster, just making it unroll faster.